Welcome back to another episode of the Executive Code Podcast. I'm joined here with Nicole, and she's got another question that she wants to get answered. We're here discussing everything to do with personal mastery. If you want to find out more, come join us in our website, paulwilliamdavis.com, where there's more resources and more ways of how we can actually help and support you. So, Nicole, what have you got for us this week?
So, Paul, you might have heard about this book called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And grit is defined in the book as passion and sustained persistence applied toward long-term achievement with no particular concern for rewards or recognition along the way. It combines resilience, ambition, and self-control in pursuing goals that take months, years, or even decades, so long-term goals. And the author studied seventh graders and realized that besides IQ, grit is highly predictive of success in life. So what do you think of grit, and is it the most important factor for success in achieving goals?
My first answer will be, as in the short answer, will be yes, absolutely. But let's break it down, because there are probably a few other elements that can go ignored. So I wouldn't mind actually covering some of those elements. But let's look at each of the factors that's raised in the book itself. First of all, and there's one thing that I do want to cover in terms of passion, because I talk about this quite a lot, and also with a lot of clients that I work with. When I make the distinction with them, they can understand how they've constantly gone in a cycle throughout their life. And so what do we mean by that? When people are trying to find out what their purpose is, they try and figure out what is it that they're passionate about. But as you know from previous podcasts that we've recorded, Nicole, what I always say is passion follows purpose, and never, ever, ever try and figure out what is it that you're passionate about to try and figure out what your purpose is, because you'll never get you'll never get the answer that way. And so let me make the distinction. Passion is transient. So there's things that you will enjoy doing, that you love doing, but a lot of those activities are transient. So let me give you a few different examples. So for example, I love skiing. I love horse riding. I love red wine. I love hill walking. There's a lot of things that I love doing. There are things that I'm, for want of a better word, as people understand it, there's things that I'm passionate about, but there's nothing whatsoever got to do with my purpose. And what people find, what I observe in people, is where they're trying to find their purpose and they're trying to be on the right track and understand what they're supposed to do in life and know what direction they should be going in, is that they'll seek out what is that they're passionate about, they'll do it, and then lo and behold, a few months down the road or a few years down the road, they've lost interest in what they were doing. And the reason being is because the passion is transient. The difference, and what people are really unconsciously looking for, is fulfillment. You'll get similar feelings in relation to passion when it comes to fulfillment, but the difference with fulfillment is it's exponential. So the more you're actually doing the activities and working on your purpose, well, then the more fulfillment you're actually going to get, which gets back to what we said in previous episode in relation to your genius drivers. Your genius drivers is what gives you your fulfillment. So the more you're filling your life with activities that are in line with your genius drivers, well, then the more fulfillment you're going to get. So understanding that passion is transient, but really what you're doing is you want fulfillment, and fulfillment is exponential. So when it comes to grit, passion is one thing, but I would be refining it from the perspective of you've got to be looking for fulfillment, because it's that fulfillment piece that's going to give you the longevity or the persistence as being what's referred to. Because as I said, if you're following your passions, it's going to be transient, and therefore you're going to lose that motivation or that drive for being persistent. So, which gets back to the next point where it says in the book in relation to the definition of grit, which is persistence is absolutely critical, or look at it as being another word of perseverance. So persistence is one thing in terms of you keep going after what you're going to do. Perseverance has a slightly different definition, but it might resonate with people a little bit more. Perseverance is whereby you will come across adversity, but you will keep going through the adversity. You'll find a way either around, over, or under whatever the obstacle that's showing up in your life in order to persevere or to persist in what it is that you're going after. So absolutely, grit from the perspective of that definition is absolutely right. But what you want to look at is that you've got to be taking continuous action towards what your objectives are, because you can have whatever persistence you want, but if you're not taking action, because what I come across with a lot of people are I observe in a lot of people is that the question that they have in their mind is not the right question to ask. And so what do I mean by that? When they come across a blockage, a lot of people get stuck and they just stop. And therefore they don't see a way of getting through it. And they just say, well, they give up from the perspective of they can't find a solution, or they don't know a solution, or they just say, well, I'm not going to get there. So the voice or the conversation that I have in their mind is not getting through that adversity. However, if you ask the question, constantly ask the question, how can I do X? Well, then the unconscious has to answer that question. So a more productive or more quality question to ask is, how can I get past a blockage in order to achieve what it is that you want to achieve? So when it comes to persistence or perseverance, you've got to be asking that question. So it's a fundamental thing in relation to, so if you were to ask anyone that's successful and how did they think and how do they act, you will find that they're the questions that they ask themselves. It's not about, are they going to just blast through something? No, they're constantly asking themselves really good quality questions, which is around how can I do something? What people also forget is very successful people will ask for help. They don't feel that they just have to do it on their own, because they know and they understand that they don't have all the expertise in every single field. So where they are lacking expertise, they will ask for help. So I suppose the reason why I wanted to extend your question in terms of the definition that's explained in the book in terms of grit, it's one thing having the passion for what it is that you want to do, and it's one thing having sustained persistence in what it is that you want to do. But actually, there's a few other elements that come into play in relation to getting to what it is that you want to achieve. So asking quality questions is one thing, having a determination to never give up in relation to what it is that you want to achieve, asking for help in the areas that you need benefit on. And that can be either with a mentor or a coach, or to find someone that has achieved close to or similar to what it is that you want to achieve, and asking them the questions in relation to how did they do it? How did they think? What was it that within their makeup or within their traits that actually helped them to succeed in what it is that you want to achieve? And therefore now you're standing on the shoulders of giants as opposed to trying to figure it all out for yourself. But here's the thing. What a lot of people say is that, well, I've got a goal or an objective that I want to achieve. And they say, yeah, but I do have determination. I have the passion. I have the persistence to go after that particular goal. But sometimes they'll give up. And the reason being because it will feed into in relation to their own motivation. So what you want to look at is, what's your vision for what it is that you want to achieve? Meaning, is it an inspired vision? Is it big enough? Is it where I'm working with clients, I'm asking to put together a purpose statement, meaning what is it that what's their purpose, is summarizing their purpose in such a way that they know exactly what their purpose is, and they can recall it into their mind very, very quickly to know when they do hit adversity, they understand what is that they're to achieve. And it's an inspired purpose statement. So therefore they know that they get that inspiration in relation to what is that they're actually going after. It's not just about having goals or objectives of what you want to do. Because again, from previous recordings that we've done in previous episodes, I talk very differently in relation to goals and objectives, but let's just use that terminology for the moment. If your goals and objectives are not in line with your genius drivers, you've got a very, very low potentiality of actually achieving those goals and objectives. However, when you set your goals and objectives, which comes back into grit from the perspective of, yes, you've got to be passionate, yes, you've got to have persistence, but it's one thing having goals and objectives. And if they're not in line with your genius drivers, well, then you've got a lower potentiality of actually achieving those goals and objectives. And the last thing I'll say on this one is in relation to what you want to have. You want to have fun. It's as simple as that. So when you read the book, you actually get the sense of feeling that, it's working hard, it's keeping going, and it's being determined, and it's gonna, it's constant action. However, life is supposed to be fun. Life is a game. So the more you actually understand it and how life works and understand that life is a game, and the more you understand it as being life is being a game, well, then the more fun you can have with the life that you're actually having. So the more fun that you can actually bring into it, it's not just about having to work hard. That's how we're trained. And the number of clients that I come across whereby they've grown up with the belief that they've got to work hard in order to achieve the results that they want to achieve is huge, meaning there's a huge number of clients that have that belief. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with the belief, but there's actually a different belief that you can bring on board whereby you don't necessarily have to work to the belief of the hard work in order to achieve what you want to achieve out in life. So the more you actually understand how life works and the universal laws and how you are here to operate, well, then now you can understand how and manifest how you can actually bring about what it is that you want in your life in a much more effortless and easier and fun way. And that's I just want to add those elements onto in relation to understanding grit and understanding determination from that perspective.
So the book relates a lot to academic success and parenting. And, up until a certain age, we don't really get to explore our purpose, in school, maybe until college, all of us study the same subjects, attend the same classes. What can we do as adults to help the younger generation find and follow their purpose?
One thing I'm working on is to try and identify and bring it down lower and lower and lower in age terms, in terms of identifying what an individual's purpose is. So that's one thing that I'm working on behind the scenes. As a parent, what can you do? Observe what they naturally are drawn to. So this is what I observed in my own kids when they're growing up. So observing is very different to telling. And what most parents do is they tell. So if you become curious in observing your kids, well, then you learn so much about them and what they will naturally be gifted towards, and it will absolutely give you the breadcrumbs to know what their life purpose is. And then what you do is you encourage, because I've seen so many different circumstances in where parents will think they know better than their kids. And yeah, look, it's natural for a parent because we're older than our kids. But where the kids will actually show that they have a desire, and they're naturally, all the activities are gained towards doing particular activities in their life, but the parent wants to direct them down a different course. So what I mean by that is you could have an individual that has a huge interest in music, for example, but the parent's observation is that okay, look at, what's the point in going down that route, because you're not going to make much money out of it, you're not going to make much of a career out of it. So therefore, I'm going to direct you down towards going to university and becoming, in my case, becoming an accountant. Thanks be to God, I don't do it anymore. But becoming an accountant or becoming a solicitor or becoming some other profession, so on, because again, that's the parents' view of what's going to help them to be successful in life. So rather than guiding our kids or telling our kids in relation to what they should do, be more an observer, and you will find very, very early on in relation to what they have a natural desire, an inner desire to fulfill. And that will absolutely lead into what their purpose is. Because it's part of the evidence that I unearth when I'm working with a client to find out what their purpose is.
So one of the points in the book that caused, some controversy was where the author said she punished her child for, I think, not getting a piano piece perfect, after like practicing, I don't know, 10 hours or something, I don't remember. What do you think about, punishment as parents, punishing your kids? Is it effective?
Short answer, no, it's not effective. So that's the short answer. Let me say, so let's get back to what's really happening. When we are doing something that we're not innately driven to do, we don't have that intrinsic motivation to do, we have to be externally motivated and driven to do it. So in that case, the parent is forcing them to play the piano and do the lessons and punish them if they don't do it wrong. That's the external motivation. Whereas you can observe a child, which they will naturally do an activity, and they will spend hours upon hours doing that particular activity, and they don't need any external motivation whatsoever. That's the difference. So does punishment work? Okay, my belief, no, because you're not going to get the right results.
And your child might grow up with psychological issues from all that punishment, although the book says otherwise, because her daughters love her and all that,
Yeah,
for
well,
all
yeah.
the punishment, which is a little hard to believe, but
I won't say anything in that because I don't want to be sued. That's one thing. But let me put it this way: there is part of the research that, because it is a subject matter that I'm quite passionate about, which we discussed in previous episodes. Part of the research, what you find, and anybody can do this research for themselves, it's called the ACE score. And it's scientific research, and ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. And a child can have an adverse childhood experience can be described as anything as simple as being given out to by a parent or being punished by a parent, right through to observing the illness or bereavement of a parent or a sibling, right through to burglary, alcohol, gambling, or somebody being incarcerated within the family itself, or even the child moving school. So the spectrum of traumas is hugely wide. But here's the thing: what the research has shown is that the more experience or adverse childhood experiences is what's defined, or the more traumas is the easiest way of looking at it, that a child experiences in the early formative years. And I go slightly different in terms of, compared to psychologists, I go that the formative years extends up to age 12, whereas most doctors or medical people, professionals, and psychologists will say the formative years up to age 7. I go as far as up to age 12. What you'll find is that the more or the higher level of traumas that a child experiences in that age bracket, what happens typically somewhere between 15 to 20 years later, those traumas start to manifest in the form of depression, alcoholism, gambling, sex addiction, drugs, you name it. That's how it manifests. And that's where, when you get to a child so the traumas happen up to age 12, add 20 years onto that, and that's where typically you'll find the highest potential for suicide, which is 20 years from that, which is 35. So in around that age bracket is where those traumas are actually being manifested. And that's part of the lead into somebody considering suicide and depression. So to get back to the point in relation to the book, can punishment adversely affect your child? My belief, yes. Short answer.
And so 15 to 20 years, as you mentioned, is that when, we're kind of like a couple of years into adulthood and figuring out that.
Yeah. We're kind of, in some respects, midway through our build in our career, trying to climb the career ladder and all that kind of things, what people would refer to. And there's a lot of things that show up in our life. And what actually happens in now, we start to get triggered. And the more triggers that we have, well, then the more that impact is going to have in terms of depression, suicide, ideation, alcoholism, and so on and so on. Yeah, that's what actually happens. Cool. So I know we went down another directory relation to the grit. What you want to understand is, there's a lot of aspects in order to actually achieve what it is that you want to achieve in terms of your goals, your objectives. Is persistence and passion part of those things? Yes, it absolutely is. But there's a lot more that's actually involved. And we haven't even touched on half of those within this episode. There's a lot more that I could add to this particular subject matter. But if you want to find out more, why not join us on our community? If you head over to our website, paulwilliamdavis.com, you'll find a lot of other resources there. You'll find a link to our community, whereas we are exploring a lot more in detail in relation to in the Executive Lounge and in the Pilot's Lounge. That's what I talk about within the community itself, answering all these kind of questions and giving a lot more detail and information for our members. If you want to find out more, again, go over to our website, paulwilliamdavis.com. If you want to find out what your life purpose is or what direction you should be going in your life, again, head over to paulwilliamdavis.com and you'll be able to reach out to me and connect with me there, and I'll be able to answer whatever questions you might have. But until next time, I wish you every success.